In a 2015 feature of National Geographic, Byron Rees put forward that in 20 years' time, all of human problems will be solved by technological and digital innovations. Has this vision come true? Or are we in a worse off time than how we were many years ago? Dear friends, my name is Ramesh Victor. I am an innovation and operational improvement consultant and practitioner, and I've been going around the globe for the last 20 over years helping various kinds of organizations improve themselves in terms of operations as well as innovation. Today, I would like to put forward my thoughts as well as my views on how innovation can help us have a more sustainable earth, a greener earth, and how, if we are not careful, innovation can also lead to a earth which is less green and less sustainable for future generations and even for our current generations. That is what I'm going to talk to you about today, innovation at the speed of light. Now, what should be the speed of innovation? Have we been innovating and have we been progressing too fast? What has progress brought about to this world? Is our life much easier than what it was 100 years ago? Now, we all need to agree that our life here on earth is much easier, much less effortful compared to 100 or even a 200 or even a 50 years ago. Many kinds of innovation, many kinds of technological advancement have made our life a little bit better to live on earth. But that's not all what innovation has done. The kind of progress we have been having in this world has also brought about various kinds of evil which actually has affected the ecosystem of the world. We have touched earth, our sustainable provider for life here on earth, and we have made this earth less eco-friendly. We have made this earth warmer. We have made this earth much more polluted. Now, is this the right thing to do? As we progress, we should also learn how to take care of our Mother Earth. We should also have to take care about sustainability and how we are leaving this earth at the best level for the future generations to come, for millions of years to come. Now, there is this slogan which says, innovation has to take place at the speed of light. Now, is this a good slogan? Maybe yes, there has to be speed and there has to be a certain aggressiveness in the way we innovate. But should it be the speed of life instead of the speed of light? Because the speed of light does not look into what the world needs and what human being needs, but rather just looks at speed of technology alone. So today, my thought process is that innovation should look into human needs. Innovation should look into the human life. Innovation should look at the earth itself. Innovation should look at the ecosystem itself. Now, who makes these decisions? Who makes these decisions that how we should innovate, at what speed we should innovate, and what considerations we should take when we innovate? Yes, that's us. All those of us who are innovating, all those who are bringing new technologies, all those of us who are bringing new digital findings to make life a little bit different from what it is at any moment of time. Yes, it is the responsibility of innovators to make sure that we are innovating responsibly. We all know that the world has gone through 4 industrial revolutions. Life was less mechanical. Life was more in the farms. Life was more dependent on natural way of living in the countryside maybe, while we were tilling and toiling the lands, and then we were living by it. But the industrial revolution changed everything. We started to depend on machines. Now, machines were good. Machines made work much more easier. Now the second industrial revolution came, the third industrial revolution came, and now we are at the fourth industrial revolution. Even a cyber physical system has taken place with artificial intelligence. Now where has all these intelligence, and where has all these technological innovations taken us to? While creating an easier life for us, while creating a much, much more globalized earth, we have also in the process have messed up with the environment. The environment is so messed up that people are worried about global warming. We all experience climate change, more earthquakes, and what not. Today we live in a world where it has come to an alarming stage where carbon emissions are very high in most parts of the world. And we have already created various spaces on earth where there are no more trees, there are no more animals living, all in the chase of technological advancement, human progress, and wanting to be living as a society who does not necessarily think about its ecosystem. Now this has to be avoided. This has to be made sure that doesn't take place, at least in the eyes of an innovator. An innovator, while contributing to progress and continuity of the earth in terms of technology, will also have to think about, are we contributing towards a sustainable earth? Now, I would like to put forward a few pictures here, a few pictures which tell us how through innovation we had been able to go into mass production over the years. But has mass production only helped us? Yes, it has helped us to speed up the way we make things. But because we are all the while rushing and pushing for profits and profits alone, we have ended up being mass producers to the extent that we have made more than what the human being needs. More cars, more houses, more everything, more shirts, more clothes, more paper, more everything than what we need. When we have made more than what we need, what happens? Now all this becomes waste. At some point of time when there's no consumption or when there's overuse than what we need, all this becomes something which you need to throw away, something which doesn't go back to nature, but something which harms nature. Imagine the amount of non-biodegradable parts in all these cars which has been manufactured. Now the thought process when these industrial revolutions came was nothing about biodiversity. It was all about profit, make more, sell more, and make more profit. Now look at the number of houses, the number of buildings which are being put forward into your own country, here in Malaysia, or even globally. Are all this needed at this speed? We have many white elephants. We even have land which has been just cut off its trees. We have the ecosystem which is being affected because of this deforestation. Now all this is telling us that maybe there's a disconnect in the way we are progressing. Progress is needed. Progress is beautiful. Progress is part and parcel of the human journey. But progress cannot be at the expense of killing our mother nature. Progress cannot be at the expense of leaving the earth barren of its values, of its beauty, of its green, and of its capability to sustain life on a continued manner on earth. We have so much of emissions coming out of the various things we have, not only transmission, so much so that the air we breathe has become dangerous. Now, does this mean that we should just live with this? Does this mean that we should appreciate the kind of innovation and the kind of technology that has led to this kind of emissions and this kind of carbon emissions all over the world? No, dear friends, no. We need to put a stop to it. Not only put a stop to it, we need to change the way we think. And to a big extent, this change of heart and this change of mind and this change of strategy depends on the various innovators all around the globe. If you are studying in a university, if you are studying in a higher institution, it is now that you should think about this change which has to take place in your world. Whatever field that you come from, whatever field that you're going to innovate in the future, you're actually in the process of innovating. Your thought process, your leadership process, your learning all contributes to what is going to take place in the future. Now the question is, are you going to contribute towards a greener earth? We have too much of waste in this world. It's about time we made the change. We cannot be people who just advance, we just innovate, and then we dump and leave this world unusable for the future. We have come to a stage where we are no more in the natural greenhouse effect, where the earth was less hot, but now we are in a human enhanced greenhouse effect, where the sun is producing much more of its heat, which cannot just dissipate and go out of our environment. Now this is affecting life on earth. It is affecting human existence on earth to a big extent. It is affecting many countries where famine is generated because there's lack of clean water, lack of clean food, and many of it is tied to this lack of clear ecosystem which we used to enjoy thousands of years ago and even hundreds of years ago. Now, there is this person by the name of William Mcdonald, who is a designer and an author, and he is someone who has been fighting all the while for innovation which has to take into account human existence, innovation that has to take into account a green earth. He asked this question: how do we love all the children of all species for all time? Yes, the question is, how do we love all the children of all species for all time? When we come out with progress, when we come out with innovation, which does not only give a life which is easier for us now, but in fact affects the life of the people of the future in a way that it affects life, the way it affects greenery, in a way that it affects the environment, the way it affects the ecosystem, then we are not bothered about our children. We are not bothered about the wildlife. We are not bothered about the earth itself. Now that is his take. And I believe it is a very reasonable and true take. Sustainability, he says, is actually not just meeting our needs and others' needs. Yes, we always talk about sustainability as just our needs. It is also something which talks about a growth, but an intergenerational value creation. Not just our generation, future generations, taking from the past, handing it over to the future, so that this world will not only be a good place but a better place to live for on and on and on and on. Now this is the great responsibility we have in our hands as innovators. The global goals, the 17 global goals which was brought about by the World Economic Forum and the United Nations, they also identified that industry innovation and infrastructure has to be one serious contributing factor towards a earth which is sustainable, greener, and ongoing towards humanity's continued living on this earth. Yes, if there has to be sustainable development, innovation has to be part and parcel of this. Innovation has to contribute. And what kind of innovation? What kind of innovation can actually do this? In the book Hanover Principles, again co-authored by William Mcdonald, they put forward 10 or 9 principles that seem to suggest to us that somehow right of humanity and nature must coexist. See, we have to coexist with nature. It's not just about human profits. It's not just about human survival now. It is also about nature's right to coexist, nature's right to survive, nature's right to progress. Now this is what which we have to keep in mind when we talk about innovation. They also talked about the recognizing of interdependence of Mother Nature, of a green earth, of a sustainable earth with human growth. We need to respect relationships between material goodness as well as spiritual goodness. In all these things, we need to eliminate the concept of waste. Are we making too much? Is our technology contributing towards making too much? Are we innovating too fast? Or is our technology creating the kinds of emissions, the kinds of world which is making it a much, much more dangerous place to live? We live in a world where oceans are seeing less of the kind of fishes that used to live. We live in a world that our jungles and our forests are seeing less of the kind of wildlife which was enjoying this earth at their pleasure. Many animals, many kinds of fish, many kinds of birds, many kinds of insects have become extinct now. Now their extinction or their lack of existence doesn't mean just that they don't exist anymore. It means that many type of support to get this world going according to its ecosystem is now going away. Imagine what will happen if the bee is not there anymore in the world. Many types of plants will just cease to exist because there will be no more insects, no more bees transferring the spores from one place to another for these plants to continue living. And the human being is going to be affected because of this. Now this is just one example. So my take here is technological growth is important. Technological growth is necessary, but we cannot do it at too fast a pace. We also cannot do it by not considering the future generations who are ahead of us. We need to do it by making sure that all our innovation is done at the speed of life. See, in order to do that, we need to consider a kind of innovation, a kind of world which is stakeholder standard. We all the while have been having a lot of economic growth, technological growth, digital growth, but we have failed to look at the social and the environmental dimension when we think of growth. Now, innovation is always tied up to growth. Now, when we only think about economics, when we only think about profits, when we only think about technological advancement, the social and the environmental dimension is lost. Now, the big question is, can we put this focus back, not just on economic growth, not just on profitability, but also to ensure that the human being, their social dimension, the community dimension, the life dimension of the human being is also taken into account as a serious stakeholder in our innovation journey. Not only the social dimension, the environmental dimension, because economy and human being cannot survive for long if we destroy the environment, if we destroy Mother Earth, if we destroy Mother Nature. Now, the various technological advancements have also been depending on the resources which has been provided by Mother Earth itself. From petroleum to various kinds of gases to various kinds of ornaments, Mother Earth has been contributing to human beings. From the buildings that we live to the papers that we write has been a contribution by Mother Earth. But when we don't take care of it, these could end. When these end, man's life is going to be miserable. And one day man will not be able to breathe well. Man will not be able to live well, because his focus was only on economic advancement and not on social and environmental advancement. So one of the most important ways and the key way is when we innovate, we need to take into account all these three things as part and parcel of our innovation vision. A sustainable development only takes place when we view economic, social and environmental elements as all-in stakeholders in whatever that we are going to innovate. Is my innovation going to help the economy? Is my innovation going to help the society and humankind as a whole? And is my innovation going to help the environment be a better place, a more sustainable place, a greener place, and is going to mend whatever mess that I have made? Now, these are the three important questions we need to put when we introduce something which we call as human-centered innovation. an innovation which is centered on human sustainability, an innovation that is centered on human beings' continued willingness to live in this world by coexisting with Mother Nature. Now, Thomas J. Watson, he put forward that design, or in other words, design is also interchangeable word with innovation, must reflect the practical and aesthetic in business, but above all, good design must primarily serve people. Now, are we serving people? Are you serving people? Am I serving people? We are serving people when we holistically serve the people of this generation, and we also serve the people of future generations, when we holistically contribute to the growth of the current generation, and we also contribute to the generations to come, the future of this world, the future of people, the future of humankind. Now that's human-centered design. That's innovation at the speed of life. Now there is this methodology of innovation which is known as human-centered design. What is human-centered design? Now human-centered design, which is also known in this modern world as design thinking, rather than looking at what technologies I have available, how can I make use of this technology to make the world into a faster place, into a much more easier place, it looks rather into human values and human needs and human desirability and usability first. Now, human-centered design starts with the human values. It starts with the human being's needs. It starts with what we call as the user. And sometimes in this modern world, we even use the word customer. In a business world, always the focus is the customer. Now, who is the customer? The customer is also a human being. In whatever that we innovate, the user is also the customer. Now, not only the current generation of users a customer, but also the future generations, the future users of our technology, the outcome sharers of our innovation also are customers. They are also stakeholders. Now, in human-centered design or human-centered innovation, it is put forward that innovation takes place only when we appeal the human value, only when we use technology to make sure that these human values are taken care of and these human values are helped to progress to become better people, and somehow this supports the business viability of the whole thing. When there is no business viability, when there is no business sense, innovation will stop. Innovation will slow down. So we need business growth. We need economic growth. We need growth from an angle of profits. But this angle of profit and this angle of business growth should spend its resources on technologies all based on what the human being needs and not the other way around. That's the center point. When it doesn't support the future of mankind and the ecosystem, it does not add to human value. And when it doesn't add to value, it does not lead to an innovation which is actually supporting a green earth and a sustainable earth. So where do we stand? Now, are we aware of all these things? Do we learn about all these things? Do we employ these things in our ways of innovating, our ways of doing things in whatever field you may be studying in your organization? Now, this is the time, not when you go out of your educational institute. This is the time to learn about it. This is the time to have that vision, because each one of you who is listening to this talk today is an agent of progress who is going to care for a greener earth, a more sustainable earth, and an earth which is going to continue to contribute to human beings. There is this design thinking. When I talked about human-centered design, I was talking about a methodology called design thinking. Design thinking is a way of innovation which is very, very human-centered. It looks at the human being, the needs of the human being, and then approaches human design. There are 5 steps in design thinking, 5 technical steps and 1 implementing steps. Now, what are these 5 steps? These 5 steps are understanding, or in other words, we call this as empathize. The second step is define. The third step is ideate. The fourth step is create or prototype. And the fifth step is evaluate and refine. And once you have done that, you go on to implementing your innovation. Now, the beauty about this human-centered innovation is it does not start with the technology. It does not start with the advancement or progress of technology at all. It starts with the user. It starts with understanding the user. When I talk about user, I'm talking about we, the human being. And I'm not only talking about we, the human being, I'm also talking about every single organism, every single living being that shares this earth as a user. The animals, the trees, the ecosystem, the environment, all these are users. We talked a little bit earlier about stakeholder inclusiveness. Now, this is what we mean by the user. When we question, do we understand the user well enough? Do we understand the human user, the customer for whom I'm going to innovate well enough? Do I understand his or her needs well enough? Beyond the human needs, do I understand the ecosystem in which this human being is living well enough? Do I understand how my innovation is going to help their needs as well as the animals' needs, the air, the sun, the moon, and everything that supports this earth? Now, when I talk about that, then I am actually having a human-centered beginning to empathy, or the first step of design thinking. Now, design thinking also ends by evaluating and giving the answer after going through a process of innovation. By answering, I found out the needs of the user, and I found out the needs of this world, I found out the needs of the sustainable earth, and I defined what these needs are. I came out with ideas. I used technology to create new solutions for them, and now I evaluate and find out, did I provide that solution for the user? Did I provide a better earth to live in? Did I provide a solution which is eco-friendly? Did I provide a solution which is not going to harm the earth now and not going to harm earth and human beings in the future? When we do that, this is what we call as human-centered design. And design thinking is one of these methodologies which actually help us to have a structured human-centered innovation. Now, it's a process that starts with the user and it ends with the user's needs as its primary vision and goal. The beautiful thing about design thinking is its ability to understand or empathize, and also its ability to go at great lengths to actually find out whether or not we have understood what the human needs and what its values are, and what is this earth's values and what is this earth's needs before we even innovate. Now, empathy is known as to put ourselves in the shoes of the customer. Empathy is known as the ultimate form of customer insight, to feel as the customer, to feel with the customer. Now, if the customer is us, if the customer is Mother Earth, if the customer is future generations, we need to empathize with all of them. Empathy is a way of making ourselves understand what is going through in their mind. What will be going through in the minds of our future generations if we leave behind an earth with so much of carbon emission, with a greenhouse effect which is creating so much of heat, which is leaving an earth which is no more having trees and animals? What will be in their minds? They will be devastated. They will be thinking that my forefathers were not bothered about us. So they would have been in a state where they are struggling to a need of wanting to mend this earth. Now, this is what we call as empathy. Empathy is also the ability to imagine and experience as if it were our own. Yes, the problem of the future earth is our own, not theirs, because we contribute towards progress and we contribute towards what happens in the years to come. The desire to act, empathy is also the desire to act on wanting to do something, be motivated to do something towards this end, towards understanding and towards wanting to solve these problems which we have empathized with the users. Now, this is design-centered empathy. This is human-centered empathy. This is empathy where we want to innovate to solve the problems of the people who are our users of the current generation and also the generations to come. This is the kind of thinking where we want to innovate at the speed of life and the speed which will help the earth to be much, much more sustainable. So dear friends, where do we stand? What are we going to do? We need to use these methodologies of empathy. There are various ways of empathizing. We need to understand what does he or she think and feel. What does society feel? What does society see and also hear about our innovation? What do they say about it? Do we hear? Do we hear their pains and do we hear their gains? Empathy is something which we need to do right before we come out with technological advancement. Empathy mapping is a methodology used in design thinking to actually go and understand the human needs. Now it is not just the human needs, it's the needs of the animals, it's the needs of the trees, it's the need of the environment, it's the needs of the future generations. Now, spending our technologies, spending our data analysis, spending all the big data which we have on such understanding of human needs and needs of future generation will contribute to a big extent towards innovating as a human-centered methodology. We have the technology to understand how we are going to progress and how it can change the earth by looking at various statistics, looking at various technologies available and how we can make use of them towards a better earth. Now there is this set of questions, critical thinking questions, which puts our innovation to a thinking process and a critical way of analyzing it. Does whatever I am going to innovate have a net positive impact on the well-being of all of our companies, our world's key stakeholders? Yes or no? When we talk about company, I'm talking about ourselves and whichever organization I am associated with. Maybe the school, maybe the place you work, maybe the place you are innovating from. Now, who are our key stakeholders? We have already considered them. Now, we need to answer this question. Does it use all types of capital responsibility? Does it create intergenerational value? Here again, it is put forward that we do not care only for the current generation, but we also care for future generation. Does it improve a dysfunctional system? We are already in a dysfunctional system where carbon emissions are so big, where the environment has been affected, where the global warming has been ever increasing. Now, does it improve this dysfunctional system? When we answer yes to some of these things and we go beyond and asking more critical questions, we are actually taking more care about the generations to come and our current generations, and we are being responsible to the human being who eventually is the user of all our innovations. So, design thinking or human-centered innovation also has this dimension of creating prototypes and evaluating and seeing whether we are harming and whether we are contributing towards a greener earth and the needs of the user. Now, these are the kinds of approaches that are needed when we want to innovate at the speed of life rather than the speed of light. I would like to put forward as an ending portion of my presentation some innovations which are already taking place towards trying to end this dilemma of economic growth as well as a growth which is for society and environmental progress at large. The people are already thinking about it. You know, in the Davos Manifesto 2020, the global leaders who joined and gathered in Davos, the city of Davos in 2020, they have decided that in about 20 to 30 years from now, they want companies, they want cities which are having zero emission. They want to go for a greener earth. In all these efforts, innovation which is more considerate of a greener earth, sustainable earth, and an earth which will take less of the natural resources of the world is already taking place. Here are just some practical things which have been innovated by thinking about the user, the human being in mind. We cut so many animals every day just to consume them, so much so that all types of animals are just being cut, and we are having all sorts of technologies to cut them and eat them at a faster rate. Here we have an innovation which is a meatless meat. Biotechnology is used to replicate meat cultures in a lab. Now these meat are exactly like the meat which you will eat, either our beef or our chicken. The fact is they are not real chicken, but the fact is they give the same protein, the same nutrients as our chicken and our beef. What does this mean? It means that we will have the pleasure of living in this world, coexisting with the cows and with the chicken, eating them less, and yet coexisting and respecting each other. Next, we also talk about various kinds of technologies which are actually transforming energies which are recyclable, energies which are not harming the earth. Here we have a convertible, recyclable plastic system which actually turns plastic into hydropower. Now this is a fantastic thing. Now how do we get energy? We have nuclear energy which is so dangerous. Now here we have plastic waste which we have created, which can be taken and converted into something which we call as hydropower. You all know that hydropower can create electricity. Now this is one way where we can use clean gases which are taken out from the waste which has been created by human being. Now this is another human-centered innovation. Third, we all know that we are going through the dawn of the electrical cars nowadays. But look at some of these things. Some cars are even made with 25% or more of recycled matter. Why? Because I showed you earlier that many of the things we have in our cars eventually become waste. We throw it, we have to discard it, which creates all sorts of emissions. We just don't use it. Some of it is recyclable, some of it is non-biodegradable. When we think along this Nissan Leaf, it was a car which was 25% recycled matter. Now what else can we innovate? What else can we do? Here we have a brand which actually recycles textiles, the very clothes that we wear. The number of clothes we throw away, what happens? The number of trees and the cotton that we use to make clothes. Now this also is affecting the environment. Now even textile can be recycled. Stella McCartney, one of the most progressive and sustainable fashion houses in the world today, has given various contributions to Adidas and various other brands by even recycling textile. So finally, dear friends, let us become responsible innovators. Let us protect human values, human needs, and the future of human on beloved Mother Earth. When we innovate, we need to ask this question: am I contributing just to progress of technology, or am I contributing to the growth of human being, and am I contributing to the future of mankind, to a greener earth, to a sustainable earth? I have put forward to you a method of asking this question, a method of innovation which is called design thinking, which talks about the user's needs and which talks about including the future, the environment and the Mother Earth as our starting point for innovation. Maybe we can apply this to whatever that we want to do in where we are studying and ask this question: am I contributing to a world which is going to be more sustainable? Am I innovating? Am I making use of the technologies available to me? Am I discovering technologies which are going to help this earth to become a greener place to live, which is going to make human life sustainable and ongoing and easier and progressive? May I wish you all the best, that you will be able to use this, and I too will be able to use these technologies, use this thought process to make this world a greener, more sustainable, more livable place, good for us, good for our future. Thank you very much.